Yep.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you for joining. So, what skill set is needed to make new technologies operational? Thank you for joining us today for a QUT Bands discussion with Susanna Bianchi, led by Rosie Atwell, on soft skills and ethics in AI. Rosie leads the interview today, and she worked as artificial intelligence delivery lead before moving on to consulting this year, with a background in fine arts and marketing. Rosie has been conducting interviews for Tomorrow's Tech in the past around a variety of topics, bringing together startup ecosystem and innovation hubs to stimulate technological innovation, including industries from health tech, water tech, advanced manufacturing, and mechatronics. She included topics around diversity, leadership, tech ethics, and women in entrepreneurship. Welcome, Rosanna and Rosie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tamara. Rosanna is Responsible Innovation AI Lead at KPMG in Sydney. She originally started her career in finance in Italy and has over 10 years of international management consulting experience. Today, she focuses on digital innovations that deliver business as well as social benefits. She's also very passionate about the socioeconomic opportunities presented by emerging technologies. Rosanna also enjoys volunteering her time to support local initiatives on tech for good and social challenges around education, diversity, and sustainability. Recently, she's actually been nominated for the Women in AI Awards for Australia and New Zealand. Welcome, Rosanna.
Thank you, Rosie.
So just to start off with, Rosanna, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Why are we talking about trust and ethics in new technologies, and why now? I think you would have seen changes in data economy in the past years. Can you explain more about that?
Yes, absolutely. And I actually have put together some slides just to guide us through the conversation, and let me know if you can actually see those in presentation mode.
Yep.
Great. So probably the best place to start is understanding how COVID has actually transformed our data and technology ecosystem. And I just selected here some powerful stats that I find actually quite interesting to bring, the trends and new things that we're actually seeing a little bit more to life. So at the moment, we're generating way more data than before, and we're actually generating new types of data because our behaviors have changed during COVID. And so what this means is that organizations know way more than they used to in the past about ourselves. They know how we operate in a business as usual environment. They know how we operate under stress, and they know how we behave when we're facing emergency challenges and kind of, a context that is characterized by high uncertainty. The other interesting fact is that the majority of the data that we are producing today is actually unstructured. And we know that unstructured data actually has an intrinsic value. But at the same time, we also know that globally, there are only a few organizations that have the level of technological maturity and sophistication to be able to extract meaningful insights from unstructured data. And at the same time, we know that data quality, data governance, data management in the broader sense is still a big headache for many large organizations. So on one hand, what we're seeing is that organizations are still catching up with kind of traditional types of issues around quality of data, the way data flows across the organization, who access data. And we know that there have also been a number of cases of data misuse and data privacy breaches also in the last year. But at the same time, we're seeing also these organizations really wanting to experiment with new technologies and use unstructured data. And so this is creating a little bit of a tension between the ambition to innovate, but not having the fundamentals right. And so what is happening now is we're actually seeing a few trends which are really positive in the tech space, but also a couple of trends and topics that we should really start thinking about out. The positive side of things is that we are demystifying technology for a number of people, especially for seniors and for younger generations. And this is a good thing because we know that technology has the potential to transform for good our lives. And so if we demystify technology and we provide access to technology to everyone, then we can actually scale and accelerate, changing our societies for good. And we're also providing organizations, also on the back of COVID, with the infrastructure and the platform to actually innovate, to reinvent the way they operate and be more agile and be more responsive to changing circumstances. At the same time, we know that a number of countries are actually experimenting digital divide, meaning that some segments of the population, for one reason or another, don't have access to connectivity, don't have access to devices, and so they're completely cut out from the benefits that these technologies bring. And I'm currently based in Australia, so you would think that a Western country like Australia is not impacted by digital divide, but actually we have here in Australia more than 2 million people that are part of what we call the offline nation. And so if we think about the challenges that Western countries are facing, we can even kind of just appreciate even more the challenges that governments and also kind of societies are facing in emerging markets. And the other kind of, I would say, worrying trend in a way is the unethical use of data. Now, on this slide that I kind of put together, there are a number of headlines around data and technology misuse. And as you can see, these are sector neutral, these are country neutral. So these cases have been reported in UK, in Australia, in China, in India, in the US. And so what is actually happening is that because we are adopting technology at a scale and pace which is unprecedented, and this adoption has been accelerated by COVID, we're not actually taking a step back and really reflecting on what is the impact of these technologies on not just the primary users, but also the communities and the societies that are directly or indirectly impacted. And so I kind of feel that as technologists, as data scientists, as people passionate about innovation in the broader sense, it is really important to actually build the technical skill set, but also develop those soft skills or kind of qualitative skills that are really looking at the human rights impact, the societal impact, and how we can actually make technology accessible for everyone.
Yeah, okay. And just on that, what are the changes you're seeing in the regulatory ecosystem internationally, and what does that mean for us developing technology?
Yeah, so we're actually seeing a push by regulators to kind of catch up with technological advancements. So the headlines that we just discussed have actually kind of raised the case for change. And because the public is becoming more wary of the dangers, but also opportunities associated with data use or misuse, regulators are really trying to walk the talk and kind of drive positive change in this space. The Australian government has been quite proactive. In 2019, it published ethical principles for artificial intelligence that are still in the process of being piloted with 5 organizations. And we're actually seeing federal governments here in Australia, starting with the New South Wales government, actually introducing mandatory ethical principles for the use of AI in the public sector. Wow. So in some countries, such as Australia, we're seeing governments really wanting to walk the talk and lead the way. In Europe, we have actually seen introduction of the trustworthy AI framework and principles. And an interesting fact is that actually there is a self-assessment tool available to everyone, which is called Altai. And you see the screenshot here. So in the context of the hackathon, I feel it would be interesting, just to play with the self-assessment and really understanding which principles and expectations are captured in the Altai, which is one of the first self-assessment tools that have been approved by governments. And European Union is actually leading the way in a way in terms of the thinking around ethical and trustworthy artificial intelligence. In the US, we're actually seeing a more fragmented approach. As an example, the Department of Defense has adopted in 2020 ethical principles for artificial intelligence being used in the defense sector. So depending on which types of solutions and sectors you are focusing on, you may actually need to have a look at whether there are specific principles that are relevant to that use case and application. In Canada, the government is working on an algorithmic impact assessment tool that helps organizations understanding if this is the algorithm that I want to use, this is the data that I'm using to train the algorithm, and this is the outcome that I want to achieve. What is the impact on the communities, societies, primary users, but also internal stakeholders? And interestingly, if we think about Asia, Asia, the Singaporean government has been very active, but also the Indian government. So in 2020, the Tamil Nadu government issued a policy around safe and ethical artificial intelligence. So what this is telling us is that there is a lot of energy and momentum going on, but at the same time, there is a lot of fragmentation around the topic of ethics, because ethics is very contextual and dynamic. And so if you look at, as an example, at the Tamil Nadu policy, you will see that it's actually different from the trustworthy AI model and framework that has been developed by the European Union. And if you look at the Australian principles, you will see that there are some common themes, but the way they're framed is, again, slightly different. So as technologists, I think this is a pool of information that is really useful, but trying to narrow down to the jurisdictions that you are focusing on in the deployment of your solutions is probably the best place to start. Otherwise, you would be overwhelmed, with the number of resources available to you.
Yeah, that's it. Now you talk about ethics and how, that operational rhythm and that more granular set of principles that we can follow in the workplace. What can we do today to make new technologies operational? What is important to make tools, devices, evolving technology acceptable?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's actually something that I've been working on for the last 18 months, because ethics in AI is a very fascinating topic, and it is at the intersection between technology, philosophy, human rights. So sometimes you really need to kind of go, okay, these are the principles. What does it actually mean, in real life, and when we go through the AI life cycle and we design and deploy these systems? So I guess the first consideration is adopting a human-centric design that, in the context of artificial intelligence, really means putting yourself in the shoes of the users and communities that will be impacted by the AI system, and really understanding whether you're solving for the right problem, but also what are their concerns and expectations around how AI should be used. At KPMG, as an example, we ran an Australian public attitude study last year to understand what Australians want, fear, and need from AI, and we actually expanded that study to 5 countries just to benchmark attitudes. So really understanding public attitudes is really important to then inform the design of these technologies. And at the same time, some governments are actually stressing the importance of engaging with stakeholders that will be the primary users or are likely to be impacted by these technologies, because when they will be part of that conversation, you will have additional insights to then make sure that the design and deployment of these solutions is going in the right direction. Now, the challenge that I would say from a practical perspective is that the level of data literacy and technology literacy that we're seeing across the board is still developing, which means that if you're looking to engage with stakeholders in a proactive way, then you need them to actually understand the topic. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to have a meaningful conversation. So at this stage, for the purposes of the hackathon, I would go have a look at research that is available around public attitudes and how the public expects these technologies to be used, and use these insights to inform the design of the solution that you are developing. The other thing that I would suggest and kind of recommend to do is actually understanding where things have already gone wrong. And there are a bunch of studies, headlines in the news, but also the AI Now Institute from the New York University is very proactive in sharing views of where they have already highlighted issues or where they anticipate issues materializing in the short term. So the report that was issued in 2019, as an example, already highlighted a number of concerns around facial recognition. So really kind of having a look at this research, I think, can also help understanding where things go wrong and helping preventing, these negative outcomes to occur. The third one is actually collaborating with other parts of the business. Now, what we're seeing is that to date, the approach to AI and technology implementation has been pretty siloed, while the topic of ethics actually requires collaboration and a multidisciplinary team learning from each other and really collaborating. So this is not an easy thing to do, but if you think about the hackathon, I think it would be great to see, people focused on the technical implementation side of things, and people actually focused on running research and understanding public attitudes and really bringing those perspectives to the table. And then the fourth one is avoiding reinventing the wheel. There are already a number of tools that have been developed by big tech companies, and also approaches that have been kind of developed by academia and think tanks. So I just listed here some, as an example, data sheets. These have been developed by IBM, and this is a way of capturing the characteristics and features of the data that you're using to train and design the systems. There are fairness categories and methodologies, again, that have been developed by IBM. The data ethics canvas, and I will walk you through that in a minute. And then the LTI, which is the self-assessment that has been developed by the European Union. And then as an example, the city of Helsinki and the Netherlands are actually experimenting AI registers. So basically documents that will provide information on the AI systems that they are deploying, how they are being used and what they're trying to achieve, and what type of data is being used to design these systems. And these are designed to basically help with that data and technology literacy. So there are a number of things that are being already experimented, and so it would be great to test, how this can be also used in the context of the hackathon.
Yes, and that was my next question. So what principles should technologists bear in mind? What should we think about when we design a technical solution to one of the problems of the hackathon and in general? And what does society want and expect?
Yeah, so one of the good things that I've actually come across, useful things, I would say, is the data ethics canvas. So the data ethics canvas has been developed by the Open Data Institute, and it is a concept that has been leveraged by many governments. And then you can tailor this canvas, depending on the level of detail you want to go down to. So one of the very powerful things that the canvas drives is actually a shift in mindset. Up until now, in the space of risk management and controls, you operate in a highly regulated environment where you have regulations telling you what to do or what not to do. And so you have basically checklists that guide you through that process. When it comes to ethics, we don't have any regulations in place yet. We know that ethics is really contextual. It depends on the population that you're impacted. It depends on the jurisdiction in which you are operating. And again, we have principles-based approaches available now, which often are not even mandatory and enforceable. And so what we need to do is actually moving away from this checklist approach to actually moving to a space where we are asking ourselves questions to challenge our thinking. And basically we come up with answers that give us comfort that we're doing the right thing. And so what this canvas is actually saying is we have these dimensions, and again, this can be tailored, but are you able to answer these questions first? And second, what is the type of answer that you're providing? What is the evidence that you have to back up these answers? And this is where you actually kind of, really start thinking in a different way, because in order to be able to answer these questions, you need to reach out to other people, you need to consult, you need to test the system in a specific way, and then kind of, provide the answers that are expected here. So just to kind of give you an example, as you will see, there is a strong focus on data sources. So understanding where the data is coming from, whether there are any limitations in the data, and data quality is a big challenge for many organizations. How data is being shared and will be shared within the same organization, but also externally, whether there are any existing principles that you need to be aware of that need to be embedded in the design, and also whether there are any kind of rights and kind of obligations around data sources. And then there is also a piece around what is the reason for using data? Because we know that people are actually starting asking questions around, okay, you are asking me all this data, how are you using this information? And we know that the data purpose is fairly high level when it is kind of articulated in our privacy T's and C's. And so how are you communicating the purpose? Are you actually using the data in line with the purpose that you were authorized for by the data owner? Have you actually assessed how people will be impacted positively and negatively, and how you balance competing interests and benefits when they kind of come into play? Do you have in place as an example, measures to understand the possible negative impacts and minimizing those? And also, how do you actually make the system transparent in a way that anyone who has not been involved in that AI life cycle can actually understand how you came up with developing the system, what are the guiding principles, what is the ethics of it, how you assess the outcomes, and how you make yourself comfortable that this technology is actually being used for the right purpose. The other thing that we developed at KPMG, and there is is kind of a demo version available to everyone for free, is the Data and Artificial Intelligence Ethics Navigator, which is basically a set of statements that set what good looks like in the space of data and AI ethics. And so going through that process, you can actually start thinking about, have I thought about this? Have I thought about that? And kind of really assess to what extent your design is skewed, towards technical performance and excellence, or kind of, also embedding social and human rights considerations.
Yeah.
The other thing, sorry, is just that there is a lot going on in this space. In relation to the open source tools, so there are a lot of tools available at the moment, and so I just kind of provided here a screenshot of what is already available and things that we're also experimenting ourselves here at KPMG. So as an example, IBM developed a few modules focused on the different, let's say, challenges in the space of ethics of AI. So they have an AI Fairness 360 open source tool that allow you to understand what are the fairness metrics of the model and really assess if these are met. There is an explainable AI module that allows you to bring to life what are the key features of the system and really building the narrative. There is also research by Microsoft that is tailored to specific case studies. So as an example, here we have co-designing checklists to understand organizational challenges and opportunities around fairness in AI. So if you navigate the Microsoft website, actually there are a few reports around specific case studies, and they also have the responsible AI cards and principles, so you can have a look at that. And also Oracle has actually developed a full suite of resources available, as well as webinars and workshops to kind of experiment with these open source tools. And here you see the model validation one as an example that validates that the model is operating as intended, but is also embedding specific kind of ethical principles in order to kind of prevent negative outcomes and basically make sure that it's benefiting everyone. So again, a bunch of tools available, and I kind of feel that in the context of the hackathon, it would be great to see how these different techniques can actually help, and in which context, and kind of, just try this out and see what works best.
Absolutely. Rosanna, was there anything further to your presentation on how we can develop our ethical skill set? I feel like you've covered a lot today.
Yeah, so there are just a couple of things, just kind of, in terms of key takeaways. So when we develop these solutions, I think the starting point is really understanding the environment in which these solutions will be deployed. We operate in an environment where organizations often operate internationally or globally. So that presents a lot of challenges because the ethics in a country can actually be different from the ethics in another country. So understanding the environment in which you are operating as a technologist or data scientist, and the environment in which these technologies will be deployed is absolutely important. And this is in terms of jurisdictions, but also population segments, the regulatory environment, and also known cases of data and technology misuse, as I mentioned before. The second one for me, which is also my kind of motto at the moment, is consult, consult, consult. The beauty of ethics is that there is no right or wrong answer at times, and so you actually need to consult with other people to come up with, a reasonable explanation and make yourself comfortable that you're doing the right thing. And so being comfortable with asking questions, with seeking support, and with bringing to the table different people is absolutely important. The third one is engaging with the communities that you are serving as a technologist, to design solutions that are solving for the right problem, and also testing your system behaviors in various scenarios. And this is really to ensure that you understand how the system could be misused and prevent the risk of unanticipated and unintended outcomes. And then the fifth one would be keep your knowledge up to date. I've been working in this space for the last couple of years, and I still struggle with defining myself as a specialist because there is so much going on. It's a new field. So making sure that you have that research capability, but also that appetite to learn new things, and in a way, keeping your knowledge and understanding up to date is absolutely critical. Also, there are a number of resources available around ethics in AI. So as KPMG, we've actually developed a trustworthy AI framework with the University of Queensland here in Australia, which is really speaking to the global approach to trust in AI. And we have done that 5-country study, surfacing basically public perceptions around AI. So if that is useful, you know, the resource is here for you to have access to. The government in the UK has actually established a few years back a Center for Data Ethics and Innovation. And here there is a lot going on in terms of research on specific case studies. So having a look at whether there is anything there that can be useful, you know, I think would be valuable. And then the AI Now Institute, as I mentioned before, actually publishes every year a report, really bringing to life emerging concerns around specific technology applications. The latest report is dated 2019 and was really interesting. So again, this could be a useful resource to have a look at. So that's pretty much it. So I think there is such kind of, you know, it's an exciting space and there is a lot of ground to cover. So hopefully these resources will be useful to guide the thinking of the teams that are involved in the hackathon.
Thanks very much, Rosanna. It's awesome to talk to you just more about trust and ethics, the changes in the regulatory space, operationally, what does that mean on the ground for people? How are we engaging with the community locally, nationally and internationally? And what principles can we bear in mind when we walk into this hackathon? Thanks, Tamara. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you for the session, Rosanna and Rosie. I really loved the discussion, highlighting trends in data and how data can have an impact on society for good. Also highlighting that the access to data and technology can't be taken for granted yet. And that's also why we have the Global Hackathon and why it's important to collaboratively work on solutions with a social impact on health, education, and economy. It was a very quick discussion with a lot of input, and there's so much more to the topic, and also because ethics really is very contextual. So for the participants, the resources will be made available to you, and please take the opportunity to be in a global hackathon, in a global setting, in a team, to exchange ideas around ethics and what is important for society. Yeah, thank you, Rosanna and Rosie.
Thank you, Tamara.
Thanks, Tamara.